The Phillies meeting with Bo Bichette reportedly goes very well. How much does it add to the chances they sign the All-Star? We'll talk about it on today's episode.
You are Locked On Phillies, your daily Philadelphia Phillies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, this is Locked On Phillies. I'm your host, Connor Thomas. Thank you so much for joining us today. We come to you as part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And the Locked On Podcast Network, now the number one sports podcast network, Locked On Phillies, your number one place for regular Philadelphia Phillies content, even throughout the offseason. You might know me for some of my other work in the sports talk space. I've been on air over at 97.5 The Fanatic, doing sports talk radio here in Philadelphia for over 6 years. I've been a credentialed Philadelphia Phillies media member for the past 4 seasons, and this is now year 5 for me as the host of Locked On Phillies. So the meeting with Bo Bichette came and went. They had it yesterday, and there was no major news. But John Heyman reported this morning that the meeting went very well. We'll talk about what very well means, what else is being said about the Bo Bichette to the Phillies talk, some odds, some other reports. We're also going to get into a conversation that the Kansas City Royals have prompted. Yeah, they made a change today. I want to have just a fun little offseason conversation about the ballpark at Citizens Bank Park. And we're going to round out with a move that the Phillies did make, not Bo Bichette, but they signed some bullpen depth. They filled out their 40-man roster. And we have a Mailbag Monday question to get to that I think will be another fun thing to get into when it comes to stats. I'm not a big stat guy, but we're going to talk about some later on in the episode. So let's dive into the Bo Bichette news first and foremost, because if I learned anything from social media over the past couple of days, it's all anyone wants to hear about when it comes to the Philadelphia Phillies. Y'all are zoned in on Bo Bichette. A lot of people buying in to the rumors and the reports. I'm on the record, and I will go back on the record. I don't believe it's happening. I don't think that the Phillies all of a sudden are going to have a major change in payroll estimation, are going to add a player that leads to them having to dump maybe multiple players in order to make that happen. It feels a little late in the offseason to just go from Adolis Garcia is our big addition to, hey, we're going to go out and sign a 27-year-old all-star who's in a very competitive market with other teams. But I've made that point very clear in the past. I just made that point clear there. If you look at the reports, they're basically telling me I'm insane for saying it's not going to happen, because everything that's being said, there's a lot of smoke surrounding Bo Bichette to the Philadelphia Phillies. So they had the meeting on Monday. We didn't really hear anything at all on Monday. It was just radio silent, which I did see a couple people saying is a good thing. Like the worst case scenario, if you're a Bo Bichette to the Phillies, would be a great thing. And don't get me wrong, if he signs with the Phillies, I'm very excited. I think it'd be an awesome move. I just think a lot of people are getting their hopes up for something that's not going to ultimately come to fruition. But there were some reports saying like, okay, the worst case scenario would be, not reports, just thoughts from other people following the situation. Hey, no news is good news, because if they had the meeting and there wasn't interest, or the sides were too far apart on money or years, well, then you'd hear, yeah, they had the meeting. There's some space to fill. Not sure if it's going to happen. The report we did get was from John Heyman this morning, saying for what it's worth, the meeting between the Phillies and Bo Bichette went very well. And there's a lot of factors at play. I'm paraphrasing here, but a lot of factors at play that point towards Philadelphia's favor. The competitive organization, first-class organization, the ballpark, the Don Mattingly stuff, the proximity to home for Bo Bichette based on the Phillies and where they play in spring training down in Clearwater, Florida. I don't know how much all of that factors in. Like, I don't have a percentage breakdown of how much those things mean to Bo Bichette. But John Heyman reporting that the meeting went very well. Ken Rosenthal was on with Foul Territory, another MLB insider, and he broke down a bunch of stuff with the Bo Bichette situation, and he ended out his thoughts on the clip that was circulating on social media, saying the Phillies, in my mind, are the favorite to go out and sign Bo Bichette. Our friends over at FanDuel, they put out some odds recently. Bo Bichette's next team. Phillies are minus 130 favorites. If you're not a big bettor, that means that they are the most likely to sign. And if you were to bet $1, you would not make a dollar back on top of that. It's better than the just even payout odds that Bo Bichette's going to be a Philly. Once you start to see Vegas and sports books put odds on the line that have the Phillies as a favorite, that's the biggest piece of smoke to me, because reporters are going to do their best. But considering the source is something you have to do. When there's money involved, well, that's when you know there's something legitimate here. What do I mean when I say consider the sources? If you're not familiar with the process of these reporters getting this information that they put out, let me break it down a little bit for you. You have people that you have a relationship with. Reporters don't just have every single player, every single front office member's phone number, and they text all of them and they hear from everybody, right? You have your professional relationships, just like you have a favorite coworker or two at work. These folks have favorite sources that they have the relationship with over years of interacting. It's no secret that John Heyman is a guy who puts out a good amount of information that comes from Dave Dombrowski. Now, I'm not saying like guaranteed John Heyman's just getting fed stuff by Dave Dombrowski. That would be unfair of me. That would be unfounded. I don't know that. What I do know is that in the past, we've seen information that John Heyman reports come directly from the Phillies president of baseball operations. So anything you see from John Heyman, a grain of salt, not that it's wrong, but needs to be added to the equation saying, well, is he getting that from Dombrowski? If he's getting it from Dombrowski, is it posturing on behalf of the Phillies? You always have to consider the source. And this is no fault of the reporter. I'm not saying John Heyman's not doing his job. I'm saying that he is getting it from somewhere. Maybe you'll get a slightly different story if you talk to Bo Bichette and his agent and that camp. Maybe you'd get a slightly different story if you talk to JT Realmuto and his agent, as some of this I do think is posturing to make JT Realmuto move off of his position of wanting a 3-year deal and the Phillies seemingly not wanting to do that with him. So I don't want people to just like see that report, take it as gospel. There's no other side to the story and move on. I also don't want you to look at it and say, that's BS. I'm not listening to a word of it. Because it's not just John Heyman. It's Ken Rosenthal. It's the sports books. There's something here. Now, let me reiterate why I don't think that this is going to happen. Because there's just so many other teams in the mix. It was just like a little blurb at the end of John Heyman's tweet about the meeting, where he's just like, other teams interested. Yankees, Red Sox, Dodgers, of course, still the Blue Jays. Okay, well, let's go through the payroll. Dodgers, ridiculous payroll. Yankees, ridiculous payroll. Red Sox, a lot of their fans are complaining because they didn't pay Bregman. They still have the money to have a ridiculous payroll. Toronto, ridiculous payroll. These are some of the highest spending teams in baseball that are also in this conversation. I find it funny that the only reported meeting so far has been with the Philadelphia Phillies. Do you think Bo Bichette's just going to shun all these other organizations? That he's destined to be a Philadelphia Philly? Maybe he is. Listen, we've seen guys, high-profile free agents, make that decision before. Schwarber, Castellanos, Realmuto re-signing, Wheeler re-signing, Bryce Harper starting it all back in 2019. Guys have picked the Phillies before. Trey Turner. Don't know how I couldn't have mentioned him. So if you think, hey, he might just really love the opportunity with this organization, certainly. But the Yankees are contenders. The Red Sox are contenders. The Blue Jays are contenders. The Dodgers are defending World Series champions back-to-back. The Phillies are not alone in this market. So I'd expect there to be some information coming out on those other teams as the week or weeks progress. Doesn't mean the Phillies can't win this. I just see so many factors, so many moving pieces that have to make this work for the Philadelphia Phillies. You'd have to trade an infielder or get rid of an infielder via release. You'd have to move Nick Castellanos. You would not have JT Realmuto back because you're not going to bring back both JT and sign Bo Bichette. Like that's very unrealistic. That's a 0% chance of happening. The Bo Bichette thing, I'm probably up to like 35, 40% chance, but I just still don't think it's happening. Like my gut is telling me that we're being led on. Maybe led on is not the right way to phrase it, but I feel like wildfire has caught with the Philadelphia Phillies fan base because we're so tired of seeing the same guys in the same positions year after year. And just like, you know what Bo Bichette is to me? He's the mirage of the oasis in the desert of running it back. You see it. Your brain tells you you've been looking for water for miles. You're thirsty as all hell. You want it to be real. So you just go ahead and strike out for it. And by the time you get close enough to see what actually is going on, you realize, optical illusion. We're actually where we thought we were, in the middle of the desert. Not that the Phillies are in the middle of the desert with back-to-back NL East titles and postseason appearances the last 4 seasons, but you understand what I mean there. I think we're so starved for change that we're making ourselves see what we want to see with the Bo Bichette news. But I can't argue with the reports. I can't argue with the odds from the sports books. Maybe I'm just being negative Nancy here, and if that's the case, I'd love to be wrong. I don't think that I am. So I still think that this is less likely than it is likely that Bo Bichette becomes a Philly, right? I think it's more likely he ends up somewhere else, whether that's back in Toronto, Yankees, Red Sox. Oh, my God, the doomsday scenario goes to the Dodgers. Like, that would be ridiculous. But I'm not putting anything past them at this point. All the guys that they have out there in LA. That's where we're at, though. Trust me. I'm not going to, not talk about this story, though. I've made my position very clear. But I know a lot of you believe it's going to happen. And I have been wrong plenty of times. So my ego is not going to stop me from breaking down this situation the way that it should be broken down. This is a legitimate game-changing option that other people believe is legitimately on the table for the Phillies. I don't. We will see who's right when it's all said and done. We do not have contract news. I don't know how quickly this situation will progress. Normally, I'd say this is going to be a slowly developing story because of how many teams are in. But with where we are in the offseason, January 13th, as I'm recording this, it might be quicker because spring training, pitchers and catchers under a month from reporting to Clearwater. Got to get your roster routed out. So we'll see how that plays out. The other thing that the Phillies have, and Matt Gelb of The Athletic reporting this, the Phillies have shown in the past that they're willing to go extra years in order to incentivize free agents coming here. They're not afraid of long-term contracts. Makes you think about the conversation we had about the Phillies also not doing opt-outs or trade clauses. They don't do opt-outs. If you're going to be here, you're going to be here. I wonder how Bichette feels about that and where that plays into the market. But the Phillies are legitimate players, I believe. I just don't think they win the sweepstakes. But it doesn't mean we're not going to keep you updated. So anything we hear about Bo Bichette, we will continue to break down as we go through this saga. Because this is a difference-making situation if it goes the way some people are reporting. Speaking of difference-making situations, a change to a ballpark? That's something that we don't really think about all that much. But it happens. Hasn't happened much here at Philadelphia over the years since Citizens Bank Park became a thing, but they did change it a little bit. And the Kansas City Royals are the latest team in baseball to alter their home park. So we're going to have a fun little offseason conversation about what you would change about Citizens Bank Park if you could, as we continue today's episode. Let's talk about FanDuel first, though, because NFL is rolling on. Next round of the playoffs, divisional round is here. FanDuel is officially in playoff mode. Every game day during the NFL playoffs, FanDuel is giving customers even more ways to get in on the action because right now, every NFL playoff game day, FanDuel users get a profit boost pack waiting for them inside the app. It's a nice little pick-me-up if you're going to bet on the games anyway. If you weren't and now you want to, if maybe you're a Birds fan and your team got eliminated and you're losing your mind and you're like, how am I going to get geared up to watch playoff football now that my favorite team is out? I know, I feel you. I'm still losing it over that as well, but I don't have to because FanDuel's going to give me these awesome opportunities and they're going to give them to you as well. So open your profit boost pack first thing on game day and see what boosts you want to apply. The boosts let you lean into your game day instincts, whether you're backing momentum, a defense, a quarterback play, or coaching. And it doesn't force you to pick this bet or that bet. You can apply it to whatever bets you already wanted to make. It gives you flexibility while also giving you opportunity. And there's a lot of great ways you can bet. You can bet parlays, props, spread, money line, over, under. They got it all on FanDuel. Quick and easy interface to use, fast and safe payouts. They're the best. You make your picks, And then you apply your profit boost to go after even bigger payouts while the playoffs get rolling. So visit FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL, and grab your profit boost pack every NFL playoff game day. Let's talk about our Everydayer Club real quick before we get back to our main content. I've been talking about it. If you haven't joined yet, now's a great time. Thank you so much for always checking out Locked On Phillies. You're the best. And thanks for making Locked On Podcast Network the #1 sports podcast network. But we've got a new opportunity for you. If you haven't already, you should go and check out our new Everydayer Club. Joining the Everydayer Club will get you access to an ad-free audio feed for Locked On Phillies, compatible with Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and every other major podcast app. You'll also get an invite to the members-only Locked On Everyday Club Discord server, which means you're going to get into this Discord server where you can chat back and forth with hosts like yours truly and other fans. Just a fun place to interact about baseball, football, basketball, hockey, whatever you want to, college sports. We got it all here on the Locked On Podcast Network. And all you got to do to join in for Locked On Phillies is go to lockedonphillies.supercast.com or tap the link in the show notes to learn more. So go ahead and check out our Everydayer Club. And I appreciate y'all taking the time to check us out every day. To everyone who's joined in on Locked On Phillies. And if this is your first time checking us out, welcome in. It's been a busy offseason. The Bo Bichette news seems like it's only going to get busier. But the Kansas City Royals made some news today. You might say, Connor, what do the Kansas City Royals have to do with the Philadelphia Phillies? Well, besides acquiring Matt Strom via trade, not that much. But it was a fun little point of news that reminds you, oh yeah, teams can do this. News came out today that the Royals are moving the outfield fences in at Kauffman Stadium. They're also decreasing the wall height. So they're moving in the left and right field walls from about 9 to 10 feet closer to home plate. The outfield walls that are 10 feet in height are also being moved down to 8.5 feet in most places. So Kauffman just became a more hitter-friendly ballpark. Is this legal? Absolutely. Baseball fields are able to create their own dimensions. Think about the short porch at Yankee Stadium. Think about what the Baltimore Orioles did with left field, where they moved it back to create that weird cavern down the line and left that really diminished the ability of right-handed hitters to hit the ball out of the yard at Camden Yards. There are changes, and the Phillies have made slight changes to the depth of their outfield walls at Citizens Bank Park. Now, that was years ago that they made that change. But the Royals are trying to create more opportunity for home runs, trying to create more offensive excitement for their team. And you know what? You can do this to help your team's chances of winning. I don't think the only reason they're doing this is to sell tickets. You'd be naive to say, oh yeah, it's just a fun thing they're doing for fans. They're doing it to try and win ball games too. They need more offense. They move the fences in. Now, it's not like you can move them into 100 feet and play on a little league field. That would actually be like a T-ball field. But you can make alterations to your ballpark. And it got me thinking, if I could change one thing about the dimensions of Citizens Bank Park, what would it be and why? I'd love to hear your thoughts before I give mine in the comments. Something you would change. I'm not talking about cheaper beer or more parking. No, we're talking about the dimensions of the actual field of play. And I'll tell you what, I think the Philadelphia Phillies home ballpark suits them as well as any in Major League Baseball for the given team that plays there. They are built for this park because they have a pitching staff that they have created that has great ground ball percentage, great weak contact percentage, at least just looking at the past couple of years' numbers. That may change with Ranger Suarez probably not coming back, but still, they got a lot of guys that avoid hard contact. They also have a lot of guys that, well, maybe not a lot of guys, but a couple of guys that have great slugging ability to create those home run opportunities. Smaller ballpark with some more offense, keeping the ball on the ground neutralizes that for the opposing teams. So what would I change about Citizens Bank Park if I could? Is there anything? Well, there's one thing right off the top of my mind that I would change, and it would kill the aesthetic of the ballpark, but I would raise the center field fence. You'd have to find a way to do it where you can still see the ivy in center field, which is a great part with the batter's eye. The bullpens are set up there, so you'd have to figure that out, how that works. But so often, I feel like I see those tall, towering home runs that are enough to get out, but because of the trajectory, they're coming down right over a low center field fence and seeing guys take them back. Maybe this is gut feel, but I feel like the Phillies get so many more home runs robbed against them in center than they rob other teams of. You raise that a little bit. I don't want to see Kyle Schwarber hit a moonshot that's like a launch angle of 70 that still has a chance to get out because he's strong as an ox. And then someone like Michael Harris goes over the wall by the bullpen and takes it away. So I think I would raise that a little bit in center field. I like Monty's angle in left center to create that opportunity for chaos. I don't think I would change that. I don't know that there's much else I would change as far as that's concerned, because I do think the Phillies ballpark is very well suited. But maybe you would say, hey, I'd like to see them move the outfield fence back a little bit more to force the Phillies be less dependent on home runs. Maybe that makes them become more of a consistent contact team like a lot of people want to see. Maybe it reduces the amount of chances that, I don't know, Aaron Nola gives up a nuke in the fourth inning. These are the thoughts that I had in my head when I was hearing this news about the Kansas City Royals moving their stadium walls in. And I was just very intrigued because I don't think we talk about this a lot, how you can alter your ballpark, not at will. You have to have Major League Baseball approval, I'd imagine, to make those changes happen. But like the cool thing about baseball, unlike basketball, hockey, and football, is that every ballpark is different. It has its own feel, but it also has its own dimensions. What would you change? I think there'll be some really intriguing thoughts that you come up with that I haven't thought of. We love our listener interaction on Locked On Phillies. So I appreciate everyone who comments, everyone who tweets at me, all of that great stuff. I also love our mailbag segments. Now it's Tuesday. Normally I do episodes Monday, Wednesday, Friday, but I wanted to give the full day Monday in case Bo Bichette news came out. I didn't want to just record and then have it be immediately outdated. So we're going to have a mailbag question coming up. The Phillies have also rounded out their 40-man roster with some depth option for the bullpen. So we're going to talk about Chase Shugart as we continue today's episode, what he could potentially bring, and what having the 40-man roster locked down means for where we're at in the offseason as we continue today's episode. So the Phillies did make a move yesterday. It was not Bo Bichette. It was today that they made this move. Chase Shugart was signed by the Philadelphia Phillies. He was previously with the Pittsburgh Pirates. They DFA'd him. He does have optionality left. That's a great thing because you want anybody that you sign to the 40-man or like put on the 40-man roster and could be elevated or could also be in the minors to have those options, because you don't want them to have to clear waivers every time they get sent down or sent up. Now, I believe he only has one option left. He's going to start the season in the minors because we've talked about how the Phillies bullpen at the major league level is pretty well set, but you always need depth. Now, he's 29 years old, so he's got good years ahead of him. It's not a back end of his career reliever, at least not by age. But looking at what he adds, there's a lot to be desired from Shugart. He's not a strikeout guy. He hasn't had great numbers as far as that's concerned. He's not even at a strikeout an inning. I believe in like 53 innings and change at the major league level. He's got like 39 strikeouts when you look at his last year's stats with Pittsburgh. So you're not really seeing a guy that is going to strike out a lot of batters. He's a righty who's more of a junk ball righty, sweeper the best pitch. So maybe that's a righty on righty pitch that you really like for a matchup based thing if you just get into a weird spot in the middle of innings. And prior to that, he would have had to be called up due to poor performance by somebody or an injury somewhere. But something that the Phillies have struggled with over the past couple of seasons is depth, both in the rotation and in the bullpen. They got great top end of the bullpen and top end of the rotation stuff. Duran, like Alvarado, what you saw out of Banks, Matt Strahm before he got traded, Keller, who they just added. When you look at the rotation, Wheeler, Luzardo, Sanchez, like we know that they got great top end arms, but guys go down. And last year when you were having the Jordan Romano, Joe Ross, absolute blank show, you didn't really have anybody you could dip into the minors and bring up. It was Mick Abel and nobody else. And they brought up McAble and then eventually traded him. And then it's just like, well, we kind of got who we got. Now the Phillies have added more depth to their 40-man roster when it comes to usable guys with major league experience. That's never a bad thing. I just wouldn't expect Shugart to be a major player in the Philadelphia Phillies bullpen plans this year. He's a breaking case of emergency arm, but you're going to need those guys because emergencies happen all the time. Now, he takes the final spot on the 40-man roster. So what does that mean for the Philadelphia Phillies? Well, it means that if they were to go out and sign JT Realmuto, sign Bo Bichette, make a move for somebody else that they'd want to be able to elevate to the major league roster easily throughout the course of the season, somebody would have to be removed from the 40-man. And that's not the easiest thing to do logistically, contract-wise, roster-wise. So this just shows you the Phillies are pretty close to set with what they've got. It also confirms what I would expect with a potential Bo Bichette move. If you were to sign him, you're going to have to move off somebody at the major league level. Sure, you could move one of the minor league guys off the 40-man, and that would be easy enough to do, but much more likely with that full, like if they had the open spot on the 40-man, they signed Bo Bichette, you could just do that. And then maybe one of those guys gets sent down, DFA'd, maybe you do trade him, talking about like a Bryce Stott or Alec Bohm. Like you could do different stuff with that because the 40-man roster spot is open. Now you'd have to make a couple more moves, and it's not restricting them from doing that, but it's just basically saying, hey, we're done with all of these fringe moves. The depth is what it is. The bench guys are what they are. The bullpen, the rotation, we've got what we've got at this point. Anybody we sign from here on out is going to be a bigger time name, like a Realmuto or Bichette, who's going to easily give us the opportunity to move other guys off the 40-man roster. Like it's going to be a guy that's undeniable, that's going to be at the major league level that we say, duh, of course we're going to have that guy on the 40-man. So with under a month until pitchers and catchers report, just shows you we're getting kind of into crunch time with deals getting done in the offseason. I mean, there are still some big names out there, right? Obviously, you've still got Bo Bichette on the market who we're looking at. Cody Bellinger, keep an eye on him. Kyle Tucker, keep an eye on him. Like, there's a lot of stuff to be figured out. Bregman just signed on Saturday with the Chicago Cubs. So there's still big deals getting done, but we feel like we're at that point where, you know, it's not last call yet, but it's about 1:15 at the bar, and you know the lights are going on in 15 minutes, and people are trying to pair up. Because once those lights go on, it's a mad dash to close out your tab and figure out what you're doing with the rest of your night. Find the Uber home, figure that all out. Right? That's chaos. And you don't want to be left there standing saying, hey, I was looking for this, and now they're telling me to head to the exit. Season's about to start, right? So things need to happen. The Phillies are working on the Bo Bichette front. I imagine they're not just going to shun the JT Realmuto conversation. That's where we're at. And with the 40-man roster locked down, further indication of the point of the offseason that we've gotten to. Now, Mailbag Monday question. Now, when I said in the opening, you might not have, if you haven't watched a lot or listened to a lot of Locked On Phillies, you might have been like, what do you mean you're not a stats guy, dude? You talk baseball. Do you not care what the numbers are? Of course I care what the numbers are, but I'm more of a eye test feel guy. Played my whole life, like watched my whole life. I trust my eyes when it comes to baseball. I don't need your WRC plus to tell me whether or not you're a good baseball player. If I've watched you for a little bit of time, I can tell you if I think you are or not. I get them wrong sometimes, but so do people who look at the numbers. So we got an interesting question for Mailbag Monday that I want to get to here to wrap up today's episode. And it was from someone who listens to the podcast often at It's Kenobi on X. So thank you for the question. Stupid question. There are no stupid questions for Mailbag Monday. What's your favorite statistic to follow in baseball? I'll tell you like some of my least favorite. I'm not a fan of WAR or XWAB or all of these special sabermetric stats that have come out recently, partially because I don't know math and I don't know how to quantify half of them, but partially because I think they're non-ball knowers' ways of proving they know ball. Like I just said, you could tell me whatever you want about Kyle Schwarber's numbers from this past year. I know he was great. Like, that's simple. So I like the simpler stats. To me, the two stats that I will like more than any: RBIs, just simply creating the driving in runs. Like that encompasses clutch gene to me. When you have those opportunities, do you cash in? It tells you about other players around that player, how much help have they had, because I do think RBIs are dependent on other teammates, which I think is a big part of the equation of everything. And you win baseball games by scoring runs. For pitchers, you might think ERA, but I'm going to go with WHIP, because ERA can be misleading sometimes. You just, I don't know, you have one bad outing and it inflates. All of this stuff can get changed, but WHIP is a much more granular stat that actually tells you something. Guys on base, bad for pitchers. Walks, Cardinals sin. Hits, not ideal. You combine those two and you average it over the innings you pitched. That is my ultimate indicator of what pitchers are in trouble and what pitchers are not. You might have a great ERA and be dancing out of danger all year, but if your WHIP is good, you're a good pitcher. So those are the two things that I look at most. And those might be simplistic stats for your newfangled next generation baseball fans. But I like the oldies and goodies. And those are the two stats that are my favorite when I determine, are you a good ball player? Are you just a guy? Or do you flat out stink? That's all for today's episode of Locked On Phillies. Thank you so much for joining us. Once again, we are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Please make sure you're rating and reviewing if you're checking us out in podcast form. We're available wherever you get your podcasts. And if you're watching us on YouTube and you haven't subscribed yet, it's free and easy to subscribe. And subscribing will get you notifications when new episodes are posted. So I appreciate everyone who's already subscribed and anyone who's going to, based on what we put out on today's episode or any of our episodes in the past. But we'll keep you updated on the Bo Bichette watch. We'll have a lot more fun stuff coming this week as we get closer to spring training. That's all for today's episode, and I'll talk to you tomorrow. Tomorrow? Yeah, tomorrow is Wednesday on the next episode of Locked On Phillies.